The sharp click of designer boots echoed against the marble floor of the elite marksman society, mingling with the soft clink of brushed metal and the low hum of distant conversations. This wasn't just a shooting range. It was a sanctuary of status, precision, and performance, where titanium rifles gleamed under spotlight lighting and handshakes were exchanged with Rolexes and pedigree. Then, the rhythm shifted. The glass door opened with a gentle hiss, and in stepped a figure entirely out of sync with the room's usual tempo. Maye Musk stood still for a moment, letting her eyes adjust to the sleek modernity before her. Her navy cardigan was simple and soft, her grey slacks creased but worn, and the canvas bag over her shoulder sagged slightly with use. Hair pulled back in a neat silver bun, makeup minimal, expression unreadable. She stepped forward. At the reception desk, a young man in tactical black with earpiece and flawless posture looked up, blinked, and then looked down again as though her presence had short-circuited the logic of the space. After a pause too long to be polite, he finally asked, "Can I help you with something?" Maye nodded gently. "I'd like to register for the open range session." The attendant's expression didn't shift, but his tone grew cooler. "This is a members-only club. Events like these are for active competitors. Professionals." "I have a guest pass," she replied, calmly unzipping the front pouch of her bag and retrieving a folded paper envelope. She offered it with 2 fingers. He took it reluctantly, scanned it, then raised an eyebrow. "Issued by Michael Reeves." "Yes." He hesitated, then handed it back. "Fine. Lane 15. You'll need to sign a liability waiver." She nodded again, no irritation in her eyes, only a quiet patience that made his clipped tone sound more childish than authoritative. From across the range, a deep voice broke the illusion of civility. Well. Looks like someone's grandma wandered in from bingo night." Heads turned. Standing by the competition lane was Jake Coleman, 5-time national champion, sponsored by 6 gun companies and followed by 500,000 fans. He wore a compression-fit shirt emblazoned with logos, his custom rifle leaning casually against his hip like a statement piece. His phone was already angled toward Maye, live streaming. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said to the camera, "today we're witnessing a rare event, the first documented case of PUBG cosplay at a professional range." Laughter rippled through the crowd, tight and sharp. Several people lifted their phones. Others simply smirked and stepped aside, amused by the unfolding show. Maye didn't flinch. She moved past them slowly, her shoes making a soft tap against the polished floor. Jake stepped into her path. "Let me guess. You watched a few movies, decided to play sniper for a day." Maye looked up at him, her voice even. "I'm here to practice." "Oh, we're practicing all right," Jake grinned, looking at his audience. "Tell you what. If she hits a bullseye, I'll clean every rifle in this club with my own hands. Deal?" More laughter. One voice yelled, "Better start warming up, Jake." Maye didn't speak. She simply turned toward the firing lanes. From her bag, she pulled out a cloth-wrapped object and unrolled it with care. Inside was a standard Glock 19, simple, matte, worn at the edges. She checked the magazine, then the barrel, then adjusted her stance with mechanical grace. The room, sensing something unfamiliar in her poise, grew slightly quieter. Jake leaned toward the camera one last time. "Let's see what Bingo Grandma's got." The Glock felt heavier in her hands than it had in years. Not because of its weight, but because of what it meant. Maye adjusted her grip slightly, her fingers curling into the familiar texture of the grip, her breath steady. Across the room, Jake Coleman leaned against the divider with theatrical boredom, twirling a custom ear protector on one finger. The crowd buzzed with half-laughs and half-whispers, but Maye heard none of it. Her mind was already slipping back, not to her last practice session, but far further. There had been sand in her teeth. She was 8 years old, barefoot, and gripping the edge of a dune as the sun spilled gold over the Kalahari. Her father's voice came through the dust. Calm. Focused. Explaining how to read the stars, how to track shadows, how to know which direction home was when the compass failed. Her mother charted maps in the back of a bush plane, hair pinned up, her pencil never stopping. They weren't just scientists. They were explorers. And May had learned early that stillness didn't mean weakness. It meant waiting for the right moment to move. Years later, she learned how to run. At 22, she packed 3 bags in silence while her husband raged in the next room. The bruises were already fading by then, but the fear was calcified. She didn't take the silver or the photos or even the books. Just the children. Elon was 5 and already obsessed with gears and circuits. Kimball clutched a plastic fork like a sword. Tosca slept through the escape, her head on May's shoulder, unaware they were leaving behind everything but each other. In a small apartment in Toronto, she worked 5 jobs. Nutritionist by day. Model on weekends. Lecturer. Assistant. Translator. Whatever paid. Whatever let her put food on the table without asking anyone for help. She cooked meals on a hot plate. Took buses to 3 schools. Folded clothes late at night when her hands ached too much to type. No one gave her medals. No one asked for her story. They just saw an aging woman who smiled too often and wore the same shoes for 5 years. At 48, she started over again. Another country. Another name on a lease. Her accent still marked her as an outsider, and the younger consultants at the firm looked past her like she was furniture. She was used to it. Invisibility had long become a kind of armor. But 3 years ago, something shifted. She had been invited to speak at a mental health conference, a small event for veterans struggling with post-traumatic stress. The organizers had expected dietary advice, but May had come to listen. She spent 2 days at the rehabilitation center, sitting in silence through group sessions, watching men and women shake in the aftermath of memories they couldn't describe. On the 3rd day, one of them handed her a pair of ear protectors and pointed at the outdoor range. He was tall. Quiet. His left leg was artificial. His voice soft and steady. "I don't teach people much anymore," he said, "but you watched. So I'll show you." He taught her the mechanics. The rhythm of breathing. The way her wrist should absorb the recoil without resisting it. She wasn't good at first, but she learned. And more than that, she understood. That the gun wasn't just a weapon. It was a test of control. A ritual of focus. His name was David. He had served in Afghanistan and Iraq. He never said much about it. But every time she missed the target, he'd nod like he had expected it. "You'll get there," he told her. "Just don't flinch." Their sessions were irregular but steady. He gave her notes. Printouts. Tips. Then, one day, he didn't show up. A nurse brought her an envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter on lined paper. His handwriting was careful, the kind of script taught by the military. "If you ever fire again, fire with purpose. Fire for the quiet ones." She never saw him again. The letter lived in her wallet now, folded so many times it had gone soft at the creases. She read it each time she felt the silence crawl back in. And now, standing in this room full of expensive gear and louder egos, it echoed louder than any insult Jake Coleman could throw. May adjusted her stance. Beneath the fluorescent lights, her shadow stretched long behind her. The Glock was steady. Her breath was even. The past was not a story she told. It was the reason her hands did not tremble. The room had settled into the kind of hush that wasn't silence, but anticipation laced with mockery. Jake Coleman's phone was still recording, the live stream now filled with laughing emojis and comments scrolling faster than anyone could read. He angled the camera toward May, narrating with the smugness of someone who'd never been proven wrong. "Here we go, folks. Let's see what happens when you trade bingo night for ballistics. One shot. Should be good." He chuckled and panned the phone to capture the row of spectators behind him, most of them young men in branded gear, sipping energy drinks and smirking into the glow of their screens. May didn't respond. Her shoulders were squared, feet firm, arms steady. She wasn't in the room, not entirely. Her body was there, but her mind had dropped beneath the noise, into that quiet space David once taught her to find. She slipped her left hand into her cardigan pocket and found the familiar edge of paper. The letter. Faded, soft, worn through the middle fold. She didn't need to read it anymore. The words were carved into her memory like initials on a tree. "If you ever fire again, Fire with purpose. Fire for the quiet ones. With her thumb, she rotated the gold wedding band on her finger. Once to the left. Twice to the right. Her husband had given it to her when neither of them had anything but debt and hope. He used to joke that it wasn't the ring that mattered, it was the hand that wore it. She took a slow breath in. Held it. Released it halfway. Then pulled the trigger. The crack of the Glock echoed sharply, a flat and clinical sound that sliced through the room like a scalpel through silk. No one clapped. No one moved. Even Jake, mid-commentary, stopped speaking. The target system clicked to life, the mechanical whir of the motor suddenly too loud in the stillness. The paper target reeled back toward them, inch by inch, as if the suspense had weight. May lowered the gun, clicked on the safety, and stepped back. Jake forced a grin. Let's see if she scratched the paint. The target stopped in front of the glass barrier, and a few nearby spectators leaned forward. One hole. Dead center. A perfect hit. Not near the bullseye. Not brushing the edge. Through the exact middle, where the ink was the darkest and the ring thinnest. The air shifted. Someone in the back muttered something under their breath. One man stood up slowly, neck craning for a better view. Another reached for his phone, not to laugh this time, but to record. Jake's grin froze on his face. His hand dropped from his phone. The live stream kept running, capturing the moment his certainty fractured. A digital beep sounded above them, followed by a synthesized voice. New range record. 50-yard precision. Glock 19. The crowd was still. No whistles. No claps. Just a room full of trained shooters, brand representatives, and smug professionals, all processing what they had just seen. The absurdity of it. The impossibility. Jake blinked twice, stepped forward, and stared at the target like it had betrayed him. Beginner's luck, he said, though his voice lacked its usual sharpness. May didn't reply. She returned the gun to its cloth wrap, folded it with care, and placed it back into her bag. Her face didn't change. No smirk. No triumph. Just the quiet resolve of someone who had nothing to prove to people who didn't matter. Rebecca Johnson, the club's director, approached from the sidelines. Her expression unreadable at first, then softening with something close to wonder. That was extraordinary, she said, barely above a whisper. May nodded once. Thank you. Jake was still frozen, eyes locked on the hole in the target like he could will it to be somewhere else. In the corner, a large screen showed the live feed still running. A viewer count ticked up rapidly. Thousands now. Then tens of thousands. And the comments had changed. Who is she? That shot was textbook perfect. Grandma just ruined his career. The elite marksman society had seen many records broken before. But not like this. Not by someone who wasn't invited, who wasn't sponsored, who wasn't supposed to be there. Not by someone like her. Jake Coleman didn't speak for almost a full minute after the announcement. His eyes stayed locked on the target, as if the paper itself might change if he stared long enough. His chest rose with a shallow breath, then dropped. Slowly, he turned toward May, who stood with her hands calmly folded over her bag, the weight of her silence heavier than applause. He smiled. But it wasn't the easy, photogenic smile that adorned shooting magazines and sponsor banners. This one was tight, strained, with something hard behind the teeth. Well, he said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. That was cute. No one laughed. Jake took a step forward, chin raised. But if you really want to play with the professionals, we'll do it right. No flukes. No lucky shots. Just skill. He turned toward the board members seated near the observation lounge, gesturing dramatically. I propose a formal challenge. 10 stations. 10 different firearms. Randomized. Full-length course. Club-provided equipment. Open to members, media, live stream, everything on record. Someone in the back let out a low whistle. It wasn't every day a champion called for open combat on his home turf. Rebecca Johnson narrowed her eyes. Mr. Coleman, this facility is not, Jake cut her off. The rules allow for open challenges, don't they? Unless we've started rewriting the charter for sentimental reasons. There was tension now. A real one. A quiet ripple that rolled through the spectators like static building up on steel. Rebecca hesitated, then turned to the board. 3 men in dark suits conferred briefly. One gave a reluctant nod. "It's within regulation," he confirmed. Jake turned back to May. "So what do you say, Grandma? One good shot doesn't make a marksman. Think you can last a full course?" May didn't answer right away. She watched him, steady and unshaken. Then, with the same quiet composure she had carried since walking through the door, she said, "If I win, you donate $50,000 to the National Foundation for Female Veterans with PTSD. Publicly. On record." Jake blinked. "That's your ask?" May nodded once. "That's my ask." He laughed.
Fine.
"Done. You won't win anyway." Then he turned to his phone, still streaming. "You heard it here first, folks. Full course shootout this Saturday. Tune in to see how hard reality hits when you step out of the movies and into real life." That night, as the clip circulated online, something strange began to happen. The tone of the conversation shifted. Memes were replaced by analysis. Frame-by-frame breakdowns of May's stance. Former military personnel commenting on her breathing technique. Shooters dissecting the clean mechanics of her trigger pull. The video racked up over 100,000 views in 12 hours. But May didn't read the comments. She sat by the window of her apartment, the city outside glowing dimly through the fogged glass. A cup of chamomile cooled on the table beside her. She was rereading David's letter for the 50th time when her phone lit up with a new message. It was Rebecca. "Be cautious. Quiet word is Jake's already adjusting equipment. Nothing provable, but several range assistants were replaced this evening." May's eyes narrowed. Another message arrived just minutes later. This time, a number she didn't recognize. The text was simple. "I heard what's happening. May I visit?" She replied with the address. Half an hour later, there was a knock on the door. When she opened it, a tall man stood there, early 40s, clean-cut, with the unmistakable bearing of someone shaped by uniform and structure. In his hand was a folded copy of the clinic's newsletter. She recognized him. "I took your class on trauma nutrition 3 years ago," he said. "You gave a talk on serotonin precursors and sleep repair." May smiled faintly. "I remember. You asked if coffee counted as therapy." He laughed once. "Still do." He stepped inside. "I heard about the challenge. I also heard what Jake's doing. My cousin works maintenance at the club. He overheard the calibration request. He's been asked to lighten the triggers and slightly skew scope zeroing. Will it be detectable? Not unless you're trained to look for it." He paused. "I served 2 tours. Ran supply for Recon. I've handled all 10 weapon types Jake listed. If you want, I can walk you through them. The tricks. The common flaws. How to feel the recoil shift if the zero's off." May watched him quietly for a moment. "Why are you helping me?" He shrugged. "You helped me sleep again." Then he opened his duffel, revealing an array of notes, diagrams, and reference manuals. Each one marked, highlighted, annotated by hand. He laid them out on the kitchen table, cleared away the teacup, and said, "Let's level the playing field. Because Saturday, it won't just be about shooting. It'll be about what kind of story people believe." May nodded, pulling out David's letter once more. She set it beside the first manual, her fingers tracing the words. She wasn't just preparing for a match. She was preparing to reclaim a space where people like her were never meant to win. The night range sat just outside the city, tucked into a stretch of woods where the stars dared to shine despite the glow of distant skylines. It wasn't a sanctioned facility, just a repurposed training ground with gravel lanes and rusted benches, but it had what they needed: privacy, silence, and the freedom to miss without judgment. May arrived just before dusk. The former soldier from the clinic, whose name she now knew was Daniel Reeves, was already setting up. He wasn't alone. 2 other veterans joined him. One had a brace on his left leg. The other moved with the quiet grace of someone who had spent years navigating conflict zones and now preferred stillness. No one asked questions. They didn't need to. Daniel handed her the first weapon, a classic Seiji Sauer P226. He didn't offer a lecture. Just a nod and a glance toward the 25-yard target. Maye steadied her hands, exhaled, and fired. The shot hit low. Not by much. But enough. Daniel's voice was calm. Recoil's lighter than your Glock. Reset your expectations. They kept going. Each hour brought a new firearm, each weapon a puzzle to decode. The FN-57. The Smith & Wesson 686. An old Kimber 1911 with a trigger like butter and a grip that punished bad habits. By midnight, her fingers ached. Her forearms burned from the repetition. Sweat clung to her collarbone, soaked through the edges of her blouse. She had changed into a dark pullover and jeans, her hair tied tighter, sleeves rolled. She looked like anyone else on the line, focused, tired, human. Daniel unrolled a leather-bound notebook. Inside were dozens of pages of notes, some typed, most handwritten. On one page, she recognized the precise, upright script. It was David's. Wind adjustments. Scope compensations. Recoil response tables based on barrel length. Hand-drawn illustrations of stances and red ink corrections in the margins. At the bottom of the page, in his unmistakable handwriting, was the same line from the letter. If you ever fire again, fire with purpose. Fire for the quiet ones. Maye ran her fingers over the page. The ink was faded, but the words were louder now than ever. The next round of training began. This time it was rifles. Daniel brought out a civilian version of the M14, then a Beretta CX-4 Storm, then a precision-tuned Remington 700. They worked under red lights to preserve night vision. Between shots, Maye practiced breathing drills. In for 4, hold for 2, out for 6. Just like David taught her. Just like she used to teach her children when they cried in the dark during blackouts in Toronto. Elon had always been the curious one, even at 5. He'd take apart remote controls just to see how the pieces fit. She remembered the night they sat huddled on the kitchen floor after the electricity had been cut off, 3 plates of cold rice between them, and he had said, "Mom, when I grow up, I'll make enough money so the lights never go out." She didn't laugh then. She had just reached across the table and touched his hand. That was enough. Now, on the range, that same stillness returned. At 2 in the morning, Daniel handed her the Macmillan to C338. "This is the final station weapon," he said.
Jacques signature plateforme.
Custom barrel. Supposedly only 5 like it in civilian hands. She held it with care. It was heavier than anything she'd used before. Precise. Demanding. The first shot missed. She adjusted her posture. Rechecked the scope. Read the wind. The second shot landed. By the 6th, she was grouping shots within a 1/4 inch at 80 yards. Daniel whistled softly. "That's better than half the guys I trained with." Maye didn't answer. Her face was damp. Her eyes fixed. At 3 a.m., they took a break. Maye sat alone on a bench, unwrapping a protein bar she had brought but not eaten. Her stomach wasn't interested. Her body was running on focus now. She reached down and picked up a spent shell casing near her foot. The first one. The one that had missed. She turned it over in her hand, brushing the soot from its brass edges, then tucked it into her pocket. Not as a trophy. As a reminder. When Daniel returned, she stood. "You good to go again?" he asked. Maye nodded. "Yes. But I want one more round with the Macmillan." He smiled. "Figured you'd say that." As dawn began to flirt with the edge of the sky, the group packed up. The others offered handshakes. One of them clapped her on the back, not as encouragement, but as recognition. Before she left, Daniel handed her a folded piece of cloth. Inside were laminated cards, one for each weapon type. Handwritten notations on quirks, timing, adjustments. He had stayed up the previous night making them. For reference. If they try to mess with the setups during the match, you'll know. Maye took the bundle, eyes soft. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. Daniel shrugged. "You already did." 3 years ago, with a lecture that helped me stop needing sleep meds. She smiled, tired but real. As she reached her car, the wind picked up slightly. She glanced toward the tree line, then down at her pocket, where the shell casing rested. She said nothing, just opened the door, started the engine, and drove off with dawn bleeding gold into the sky behind her. Because sometimes, preparation was its own kind of promise. And Maye Musk had always been a woman who kept her promises. The elite marksman society had never seen a crowd like this. The private club, usually cloaked in quiet prestige, was now humming with reporters, cameras, and an energy thick with expectation. Folding chairs lined the perimeter of the indoor stadium range. Sponsors hovered near the back, whispering into headsets. Banners hung from the walls, most of them featuring Jake Coleman's face, grinning with practiced confidence beneath glowing logos. Jake arrived in a branded tracksuit, followed by a team of assistants. His custom ear protection was already around his neck, and he walked with the air of a prizefighter entering a ring he believed he owned. He shook hands. He posed. He spoke loudly. Maye arrived alone. She wore a simple navy jacket, no insignia, no embellishments. In one hand, she carried the same cloth-wrapped Glock she had used days earlier. In the other, a small duffel bag.
No entourage. No sponsor.
Rebecca met her at the check-in station, clipboard in hand. Lane assignments are randomized. You'll rotate every 2 stations. Scoring is digital and posted in real time. 3 certified judges. Everything's streamed live.
No dilas.
Maye nodded. Rebecca hesitated, then leaned in. I checked the gear myself. Mostly clean. But the Macmillan at Station 10, something's off in the zeroing. I couldn't get a full reconfig without drawing attention. I'll manage, Maye said. Jake caught sight of her and strode over with a camera crew close behind. Well, if it isn't the people's champion, he said, voice oozing with false charm. Hope you got some rest. Naps are important at your age. Maye looked at him once, said nothing, and walked to her lane. The cameras loved it. The first station was a rapid-fire test with a Beretta PX-4 Storm. Jake went first. His shots were fast, controlled, tight groupings in the upper right quadrant. The crowd clapped, not too loud, polite, but expectant. Then Maye stepped up. She adjusted her stance. Fired. 10 rounds, spaced evenly, each one hitting within a 2-inch grouping. Not fast. Just precise. Her score blinked across the screen. Higher than Jake's. The second station, long-range pistol, 55 yards. Glock 34. Jake narrowed his eyes. His shots were clean. Not perfect, but close. A solid run. Maye's grouping was tighter. By Station 4, murmurs were spreading. The crowd was shifting. Heads leaned toward each other. Viewers online began clipping segments in real time. The chat feed exploded. Who is she? She's winning. How old is this woman? Station 5 was a revolver challenge. A Ruger GP 100. The trigger pull was stiff. Too stiff. Maye felt it the moment she wrapped her finger around the metal. Off. The tension was deliberate. Sabotage dressed as maintenance. She paused. Re-centered. Let her breath guide her. David's handwriting flashed through her memory. Adjust for pressure. Breathe slower. Shift stance to absorb torque. She fired. The first shot landed high. The second, closer. By the 6th, she was hitting center again. The judges said nothing, but one raised an eyebrow behind his clipboard. Jake, meanwhile, began to rush. His face had taken on a new edge, smiles faded, jaw tight. He was hitting his marks, but the flair was gone. The certainty wavered. Stations 6 through 8 passed in a blur. Each round brought a different weapon. The crowd had gone from curious to captivated. Some of the younger shooters in the audience stood now, phones held high, recording every shot. Maye moved from station to station with quiet consistency, her expression never changing, her pace never faltering. Station 9 was close quarters, a timed run through 5 targets with a semi-automatic shotgun. Jake hit all but one. Maye matched him. The scoreboard now showed them tied. It came down to station 10. The Macmillan C338.
Jacques signature rifle.
He stepped forward with renewed swagger, his confidence buoyed by familiarity. He adjusted the scope, exhaled, and began. 10 shots. 9 bullseyes. The crowd cheered. The camera zoomed in on his face. He waved, grinned, mouthed something to his crew. Then he stepped back. Maye stepped forward. She didn't touch the scope. She opened her duffel and pulled out David's laminated notes. She unfolded the wind chart. Scanned it. Calculated mentally. Then she closed her eyes. The rifle sat before her, long and gleaming, its weight inviting but deceptive. She placed her hands where they needed to be. Checked the angle. Read the air. She fired. 1, 2, 3. Each shot rang out with a strange finality, as if the range itself was holding its breath. The screen displayed impact zones in real time. All 3 hit dead center. 4, 5. She adjusted slightly for recoil drift. 6, 7. Bullseyes. 8. Jake leaned forward in his chair, eyes narrowing. 9. Then, just as she was about to fire the 10th, something flashed. A camera bulb from the audience. Direct. Blinding. Positioned at the perfect angle from Jake's side of the viewing gallery. A fraction of a second. She blinked. Then closed her eyes. Held the breath. Opened them again. And fired. The 10th bullseye appeared on the screen. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. A complete stillness, as if the world had paused mid-motion. Then the room erupted. The scoreboard updated. Final score, Maye Musk 100. Jake Coleman 98. Jake stood abruptly. His face twisted with disbelief. "That's not possible," he barked. "Something's wrong with the readings. No one hits 10 for 10 with that 0. No one." Rebecca stepped forward. She wasn't smiling. "Actually, we reviewed the footage from the calibration room earlier today." She held up a tablet. The screen played security footage. A technician, quietly adjusting the scope settings. His badge showed Jake's sponsor logo. Time-stamped. Unmistakable. The crowd's energy shifted instantly. Gasps. Murmurs. Phones raised. Jake's voice cracked. "This is ridiculous." "I didn't authorize," Rebecca interrupted. "The footage shows otherwise." A moment later, another screen lit up, this time a clip from the livestream. The flash at Maye's final shot. Enhanced. Traced back to a camera in Jake's camp. The audience turned on him like wind changing direction. A teenager shouted, "She still won anyway." The chant began small. "Maye, Maye, Maye." It grew louder. Maye. The woman who had walked in alone. Who had been called grandma. Who had never raised her voice, never demanded anything but a fair shot. Now she stood still as the room shook with her name. Jake turned away, face pale. One of his sponsors was already leaving. Another was on the phone, expression grim. Rebecca approached Maye, her voice low, steady. "Congratulations. You didn't just win. You endured." Maye said nothing. She only reached into her pocket and pulled out a single spent casing. The first one she had missed during training. She held it gently in her palm, then slipped it into the hands of a young woman in the front row, someone who had been silent the whole time, eyes wide with something between awe and hope. Maye leaned down and whispered, "Keep this. So you remember even perfect days start with a mistake." The cameras kept rolling, but the real story had already taken root. A woman who wasn't supposed to win. Had. 2 weeks later, the Elite Marksman Society released a quiet statement. Jake Coleman had been suspended from all club competitions for 2 years. His sponsorships, once plastered across half the gear in the range, began to vanish, quietly replaced with neutral placeholders. An internal review cited ethics violations and conduct unbecoming of a representative of the sport. There were no press conferences.
No apologies.
Just absence. In contrast, the board offered Maye Musk an honorary position. Senior advisor, lifetime member, a plaque, a seat on the next review panel. She declined. She told them, gently, that she had never walked into the club to be part of it. Across the west wall of the training hall, a new sign appeared. The calm range in honor of Maye Musk's precision. It was printed in simple black letters over brushed steel, no logo, no tagline. Beneath it, a quote. Still hands. Still heart. The footage of her final shot had gone viral, racking up millions of views across platforms. Commentators called it the comeback no one expected. A turning point for ageism in sport. A masterclass in grace under pressure. But Maye didn't follow the coverage. Instead, she poured the winnings into something else. A program for female veterans suffering from PTSD. Classes met twice a week in a converted community center just outside the city. The room was small, but the windows let in morning light, and the mats were clean. Maye taught posture first. Breathing second. Focus, not just as a concept, but as a discipline. Control was not about strength, she told them. It was about refusal. The refusal to be pulled apart by noise, fear, or memory. She called the class the still line. One morning, after a session, she was invited to speak at a press event. Several local journalists had gathered, more curious now than skeptical. The final question came from a young woman near the front, her notebook already half filled. Mrs. Musk, do you consider yourself a feminist icon? Maye paused, then smiled, just slightly. I don't think so, she said. I just don't like being erased. The silence that followed was the respectful kind. The kind that understood something had just been said with more weight than volume. Later that evening, Maye returned to the range alone. She walked the length of the hall, tracing the stations with quiet familiarity. The lights were dimmed now.
No cameras. No banners.
Just space. At the far end, she found a young woman sitting with a rifle in her lap. Nervous. New. Her shoulders were too tense. Her grip too tight. Maye sat beside her without a word. After a moment, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small brass object. The spent casing from her very first missed shot during training. She placed it gently into the girl's hand. Keep this, she said. So you remember, if you ever lose your grip, you can always steady it again. The girl looked at her, blinking back something that wasn't quite tears. Maye stood and walked away, the echo of her steps soft against the padded floor. Outside, the last light of day caught her silver hair, setting it briefly aglow. She didn't look back. She didn't need to.